Are we seeing the end of censorship? Well, look, Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, has announced that the company is going to end its third-party fact-checking system, FactCheck, and instead embrace community notes, similar to what we see on Elon Musk's X. And he also notes some of the problems in the existing systems. And in this announcement also, he stated they're planning to allow more speech by lifting restrictions on some topics that are part of mainstream discourse. And meanwhile, well, could the United States really take Greenland and the Panama Canal? Well, it seems like Trump is serious. Trump is saying that he cannot assure that military or economic coercion would not be used to take control of these two strategic locations. Also, a bill that would allow the Department of Homeland Security to detain criminal illegal immigrants and even allow states to sue the federal government if they fail in their immigration enforcement has been passed by the House of Representatives. Now, I'll be going into these stories and more today, so let's jump into it. Now, folks, first off, online censorship could be coming to an end. Now, platforms on Meta, that's Facebook, Instagram, Threads, the Meta CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, he announced that the company is going to end its third-party fact-checking system and instead embrace community notes. And he said they want to do what they see on Elon Musk's X. They are actually going to model it after that, where the community, you and I and others, can actually leave notes on different posts and fact-check them ourselves. No more institutional fact-checking. And Meta, in their announcement, also stated they are planning to allow more speech by lifting restrictions on some topics that are part of mainstream discourse and focusing their enforcement on illegal and high-severity violations. Unless it violates the law, it might not get pulled down. Now, Zuckerberg posted a video on this yesterday, and he noted the problems that were caused by the censorship system that had been used previously, up until just now, actually. And he also explained how he plans to work with the incoming Trump administration to begin pushing back against censorship coming into the United States from Europe, and even suggesting that America could begin enforcing and spreading freedom of speech, freedom of expression in other countries. We will reverse course, in other words. Now, here's how Mark Zuckerberg explained this move. Watch this.
But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
Now, Zuckerberg goes on to explain in this video how this is all going to work, and he says that their plan is to get rid of their third-party fact-checkers, all those big media organizations and third-party organizations that believe they have the right to decide what is true and what's false, and they're going to replace those with a community note system, just like what you see on X. And that allows individuals like you and I to actually fact-check individuals. And we've seen how this works on X. It even leads to a lot of mainstream media and major figures being fact-checked by the community. Now, Zuckerberg notes that after Trump was first elected in 2016, the, quote, legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. And that was the case. Remember, the big narrative at the time was how Russian disinformation stole the American election. They were accusing Trump of colluding with Russia. It turned out to be fake. It turned out the people pushing the narrative of foreign disinformation rigging our election were lying. It was based on false information that was spread and included to the media. But look, despite that, the programs for censorship that were established as an extension of that, and all the content moderation systems, those were kept in place. But that brought about additional problems, and this is how Mark Zuckerberg explains what that caused. Watch this.
We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
Now look, I would personally have to agree. I have seen the so-called fact checkers get their facts wrong in many, many cases. And many people have brought up the issue that we seem to need people who can fact check the fact checkers. A big problem is the so-called fact checkers, they have tended to be just one side of the political debate. And this has led to accusations that political bias often taints their views of what's true and what's not. And this has become an even bigger issue when it comes to the dynamic between the legacy media and the rise of independent media, at least in my opinion. Some outlets have used their monopoly on these platforms to try to destroy and demonetize independent voices that would otherwise challenge them. And as that whole establishment system has now lost its credibility, the backlash of this is also affecting the whole platforms. This is why you see a lot of the media right now struggling to survive. And this is why a lot of platforms that adopted these censorship policies are also struggling. Maybe that's why we're seeing the censorship arms start to get lifted right now. People are fed up. They no longer trust these organizations, and they're looking elsewhere. And look, finally, I think a lot of these companies are realizing they have lost the trust of the public. The public users, and that's their user base, they no longer believe these people. But look, back to the new plans for Meta. Mark Zuckerberg adds they also plan to simplify their content policies and will start to lift policies on what they censor. Even topics that have become taboo on some of the big corporate media platforms, these topics could soon be opened up as fair game for public discourse. Watch this.
We're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far.
Oh, hey, imagine that. But this is also part of the problem, right? If you try to protect one viewpoint from criticism, if you try to shield it from attacks, you also risk attacking any viewpoints of anybody else who sees things differently. Because the only way you can protect one view is by suppressing another, and that other is a person as well. Now look, while these policies are being framed as inclusive, as he mentions, many people felt that any opposing political views or systems of values, because some of this also ties into people's religious values, that these were suppressed and not able to be included in public discourse. Now look, not everybody thinks the same, and not everybody has the same beliefs, and so suppressing one in favor of another will obviously cause you problems, as we've seen it do. And it seems that from here on out, people will once again be able to have their open debates on these topics, even if the topics are deemed to be sensitive, meaning they're going to offend somebody, right? Now, like a few other key points, Zuckerberg notes they'll also end some of the automated systems that have been looking for content violations. They will still remove content that is illegal. And this is a policy that Elon Musk has also tried to maintain on X. He's basically saying, unless the content is illegal, I will not remove it. That has brought out additional problems in other countries where even public discourse is illegal, like many parts of Europe, parts of Latin America, and so on. But Zuckerberg addresses this. We'll get into it. And look, for everyone else, people will have to flag content individually. If someone is offended by something, they can flag it, and it's a much slower process. And also, look, civic content, meaning news, might be making a comeback as well. This means Facebook and Instagram and maybe Threads could again start promoting political content, something that they had suppressed quite a bit. They're not going to be doing that anymore. And look, also on a funny note, they're going to move the company's trust and safety and content moderation teams. They're going to take them out of California, and they're going to move these operations to Texas. And Zuckerberg actually just suggests this is to reduce the bias of the teams themselves. And of course, look, California leans more left, Texas leans more right, and so this could mean a more conservative content moderation base if that does happen. We'll see how they do it. It also depends where you go in Texas, by the way. Now look, on this note, Meta has also appointed UFC president Dana White to the company's board of directors. Dana White, of course, has become fairly close to Trump as well. Now, White, well-known Trump supporter, and in fact, Trump appeared with him at some UFC games alongside each other. And this move is interesting. It suggests that Meta is looking to tap into Donald Trump's circle in an effort to get closer to the incoming administration. And Zuckerberg's actually saying as much as with this as well. Now, this is actually something that goes back to something from Meta that was announced a few days ago also. Their newly appointed chief global affairs officer is also a noted Republican. MSNBC said this: Facebook parent company Meta is replacing its president of global affairs, Nick Clegg, with Joel Kaplan, the company's current policy vice president and a former Republican Party staffer. It notes the shakeup comes 3 weeks before President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration, and it's the latest sign of how tech companies are positioning themselves for a new administration in Washington. It notes that Kaplan was White House Deputy Chief of Staff under former President George W. Bush, and he appeared at the New York Stock Exchange with Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and Donald Trump in December. It notes he also attended Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing in 2018 as a personal friend, causing a controversy for the social media company. Controversial maybe of the media itself. A lot of media do that, right? A lot of news outlets say, this is controversial. Controversial according to whom? Oftentimes what you have is a news outlet makes a public statement and makes controversy, and then all the other media say it's controversial because media that agree with them have stated it's controversial. That tends to be the circle of news and how they manufacture that type of narrative. But look, one of the bigger points here, at least as it relates to the incoming Trump administration, is this. Mark Zuckerberg notes they will start working with the Trump administration to push free expression as a global issue. Watch this.
Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it.
Now look, this could be big. A lot of pressure to censor content comes from other countries. A lot of the pressure that big tech companies have is not from within the United States. Brazil, for example, has forced censorship onto X, even with Elon Musk trying to stop it, even right here in the United States. The United Kingdom, the European Union, they have been pressuring American tech companies to enforce European laws on the United States on censorship. And look, ending this in and of itself, that'd be a big thing enough, but what Zuckerberg is suggesting here is that they may take this a step further. They will not just be protecting Americans from censorship and upholding the Constitution. They will be trying to uphold free expression globally. He even mentions China. Imagine freedom of expression in China, or America's going to cut them off trade-wise, right? This could potentially make the entire world just a bit more free. So we'll see how that goes, folks. Now, look, in other news, Trump's Greenland acquisition is gaining more steam. It actually seems he is very serious about it. Don Jr. posted on X about his arrival in Greenland. He posted photos of himself with some of the local Trump supporters who arrived to greet them. And Don Jr. said this on X. He said, "Greenland loves America and Trump." Incredible people with an equally awesome reception. They just want to be able to utilize some of the incredible resources that they have and allow themselves, their country, and their kids to flourish. Now, Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA is also on the trip. He said in a post on X that we had an absolutely incredible experience today in Greenland. More to come soon. And he also posted a short video. Watch this.
Quite a day here in Greenland. Sergio? Mega. An incredible experience. Here at Trump Force One. Donna's over here. Friendliest people. They love America. And we'll see what happens. Make Greenland great again. And the sun is setting. It's only 2:30 in the afternoon. The sun is setting. It's just one of those things. And it's very, very cold here.
Now, on this point, Donald Trump seems actually very serious about the proposal for the United States to obtain Greenland and to also reclaim the Panama Canal. And he's not ruling out the possibility of even using military force. This is what he said during a press conference at Mar-a-Lago yesterday. Watch this.
We need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way.
Trump also suggested the United States could put tariffs on Denmark, which technically controls Greenland, unless they want to sell us Greenland. And this could also help sustain the country financially. Watch this.
And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
Now look, when the discussions on this first started, it wasn't clear whether Trump was serious or not. A lot of people took it as Trump just joking. But it seems right now that Trump is actually very, very serious. Even his proposal for the United States to make Canada the 51st state, it looks like he's not joking. He might be serious about it. Although, look, the reception in Canada does not seem to be too strong on this just yet. Around 8 to 10% of Canadians in some polls have suggested they would support it. Most of them do not. But that may change if they get maybe their trade tariffs hit with them or something like that. And look, Trump also seems to be taking a shot at Mexico as well, although he doesn't seem to want the United States to obtain Mexico. He did, though, announce plans to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. He's going at it, folks. Also, in addition to this, look, other statements, Trump is suggesting the United States could change its election laws to make sure all votes are counted the same day by around 10 p.m. at night. Watch this.
One of the things we're going to do is we've got to fix the election so that we get honest counts and they get done by 10 o'clock in the evening or something thereabouts. They have places where they're still counting votes.
Now, that would be a big change for our elections. This would end some of the problems where some counties in some states, like California, tend to drag out the process of counting votes and certifying the election. The delays, sometimes weeks, of them counting votes, that often raises concerns among voters, mostly on the conservative side, over whether the votes are valid or not. When it gets dragged on like this and they keep counting votes and they say, oh, I found votes in the trunk of this car, guess we have to count them now, a lot of people don't trust it. Trump is saying that that could come to an end. He wants to bring that practice to an end. And look, in other news, a bill that would allow the Department of Homeland Security to detain criminal illegal immigrants and even allow states to sue the federal government if it fails in immigration enforcement has now been passed by the House of Representatives. Fox News said this. It says the Laken Riley Act, named after a young woman who was murdered by an illegal immigrant, passed the House of Representatives on Tuesday afternoon, the first piece of federal legislation approved by the 119th Congress after the House agreed to its rules for the term. All voting Republicans supported the bill, all Republicans behind it, and 48 Democrats. It notes that more than the total left-wing lawmakers who voted for it last year. It passed on a 264 to 159 margin and will now be sent to the Senate. The bill would require federal immigration authorities to detain illegal immigrants found guilty of theft-related crimes. It also would allow states to sue the Department of Homeland Security for harm caused to their citizens because of illegal immigration. Now, look, the Senate is supposed to vote on the bill this week, and given that Republicans are fully behind it, at least in the House, and 48 Democrats also voted for it, it has a good chance to pass. Senator John Fetterman, a Democrat, he has already come out as the first Democrat in the Senate to sponsor the bill. But the big question will be whether it goes to the desk of Biden or to the desk of Donald Trump to be signed into law, given that Trump's inauguration is still a couple weeks away. But look, back to the bill, though. This is what it officially says. This is the congressional website. It says, the bill requires the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, to detain certain non-U.S. nationals, aliens under federal law, illegal aliens, who have been arrested for burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting. And it notes as well some of the issues with this. Folks, let's go to a quick break. We'll be right back.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. Now, back to the congressional bill that just got passed, again, the Laken Riley Act. Congress says this. It says the bill authorizes states to sue the federal government for decisions or alleged failures related to immigration enforcement. Meaning then that criminal aliens will not just be the violent offenders. Again, part of the big argument was if they rape somebody, if they murder somebody, if they rob somebody, then you deport them. And normally in the United States, when it comes to deportations, typically you go after the criminal aliens. When it comes to ICE, immigration enforcement, they tend to work with the police departments. If an illegal immigrant commits a crime, they hand them off to ICE. ICE deports them. The problem you have, though, is that some crimes are deemed maybe less serious. And so while a murderer or a rapist might face deportation, although currently many of them do not, the lower level crimes, if someone walks into a store and steals something off a shelf, these things may not lead a person to being deported. This will change that. It means that if you illegally enter this country and you commit any type of crime, you face deportation. And look, in other news, folks, the prohibition era, banning of alcohol, may be making a comeback, at least in terms of public warnings. The Surgeon General of the United States recently warned of a cancer risk from alcohol, and this could be just the beginning. Daily Wire said this. It said last week, Biden's Surgeon General Vivek Murthy issued an advisory, quote, outlining the direct link between alcohol consumption and increased cancer risk. It notes that Murthy wants health warnings on all alcohol products that mention cancer risk, as well as a reassessment of the guideline limits for alcohol consumption to account for cancer risks. Now look, They've done similar things like this with tobacco products for years. If you want to buy a pack of cigarettes and you look at the box, it's not a cowboy looking all cool with a cigarette in its mouth, it's a picture of lung cancer. They might have some type of warning label similar to that for alcohol. Now they note here, as the Daily Wire reported in October, a secret committee working deep behind the scenes of the Biden administration is working to revise federal dietary guidelines regarding alcohol. The Interagency Coordinating Committee of the Prevention of Underage Drinking is a 6-person panel working within the Department of Health and Human Services. But instead of just trying to keep kids from drinking, it says, this panel reportedly wants the United States to adopt the World Health Organization's position that no level of alcohol consumption is safe for our health. And notes that Murthy notes that alcohol is a well-established preventable cause of cancer, responsible for about 100,000 cases of cancer and 20,000 cancer deaths annually in the United States. And it says he further notes that for breast cancer specifically, 16.4% of total breast cancer cases are attributable to alcohol consumption. Now, there have been some increased warnings against drinking alcohol lately, including its cause of cell damage. Internationally, it's becoming a bigger narrative as well. We'll see whether this campaign actually moves forward when Trump takes office. Notably, Donald Trump has said that he has never done drugs and he has never drank alcohol. And with RFK Jr. coming in, this agency looking at possibly regulating alcohol even more, that would be under HHS. RFK Jr., under the Trump administration, is set to be nominated to the HHS. He could be leading it, meaning he will be the one in charge of this. And he is going to have a campaign to make America healthy again. It does not seem right now he's given any suggestions that alcohol could, be part of those regulations, but we'll see whether he does it or not. There is a possibility with it. There are also some reports that the Biden administration may be looking to restrict cigarettes even further. Remember that Biden was looking to ban menthol cigarettes early on with his administration. They dropped that plan. That may still be on the table. That said, folks, hit the like button, leave a comment. Let's jump into some questions. All right, let's see here. Let's see, Wow's It Pants, you're saying, wonder how bots will be used to swarm community notes. I was thinking the same thing. Back on the point of Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and Meta companies, which means Instagram, Threads. Remember what Mark Zuckerberg also announced just recently was they want to start having AI users, meaning if you go on these programs, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, I don't know if they're going to do it on Threads, but they did mention Facebook and Instagram, you will be looking at an account page. It'll have a profile, it'll be making posts, it's actually posting content, but the account is an artificial intelligence. The content being generated is AI-generated content, and these will be interacting with people. Maybe if you post a video and you get 1,000 views and 1,000 likes and everybody's commenting on it, it may not be real people. It may be bots. Now, a lot of platforms have been accused of using bots already, typically not the platforms themselves, but foreign countries, scammers, that kind of thing, right? There is a big problem with bots. Maybe if you're on Facebook, you've gotten messages from people posing as like pretty girls and so on, but they're bots. They are fake. There is a lot of that right now. They're going to be doing that officially, maybe not the pretty girl thing, but they are going to be doing it officially in order to drive engagement, but it's fake engagement. As Wow's It Pants, My Pants notes, that may become an issue when it comes to community notes. I do think there will need to be transparency to make it clear that the community note system is not being compromised by either the existing fact-checker organizations, which again seem to have a very strong political agenda, or bots masquerading as users infiltrating the community note system. When it comes to X and the way that Elon Musk has done this, they do have systems in place to kind of vet people who are able to affirm the community notes. They look at having systems in place to eliminate strong political bias, not meaning that they have people who claim to be centrist, but instead people of both sides and so on. And so there will need to be a lot of transparency to ensure that they're not rigging it under the guise of making it open, right? Because they've lost a lot of user trust, especially with Republicans, because Republicans tended to be the ones who were the most censored on the platform, right? See more butts. You're saying, I also advocate that when you move from California to any other state, you can't vote in that state for 10 years. I'm sure Texas would love that. That has become a problem, actually. You know, you've had kind of a great exodus from California. Look, I'm from California, folks. A lot of my family still lives there, and a lot of my family has moved out of state. I have a lot of family who moved from California to Arizona. Most of my family is conservative, even though they're from California. In fact, I didn't really know many liberals growing up. And so that's just, you know, my circle, right, that I kind of grew up around. I do know that when they go to other states, a lot of people are wary of Californians. They're like, wow, I hope you people don't make us like the place you left. And that is a big concern, that if you leave because you don't support the high taxes or the unlivable conditions or maybe the high crime, that you don't move somewhere and just vote it in when you go there as well. That is a big concern. And I know that some people would argue that Texas becoming more of a purple state, maybe even a swing state soon, could be attributed to a lot of people leaving California for Texas. So we can joke about it, but there are some people who are actually very concerned about how it's affecting their states. Let's see, Jerry, you're saying, does it seem that Zuck, as in Mark Zuckerberg, Zuck's change is more for cost than wanting free speech? Cost of vendor and staff for moderation. Also cut off any lawsuits that people might raise against those fact-checker companies. It could be. I don't know what his intent is. I don't know what his thinking is. It could be. But we can look at what happened when Elon Musk took over Twitter, right? What happened after Elon Musk bought Twitter? He went in and he fired like 70, 80, some say 90% of the employees. And suddenly the platform worked better than it did before. For some reason, Twitter had like child pornography and horrible things like that. And then when he fired like 80, 90% of the people, that content suddenly started getting pushed off the platform. So how was it that you were able to have massive censorship programs where they were going after people for political views or whether they think COVID came from China or not, and they were able to censor tons of people for that, but criminal content seemed to still be on the platform? Why was that, right? Now, when Elon Musk took over the platform, that came to an end. He went after criminal content, and you don't see much of that on the platform now, at least I've never seen it, but he has allowed people to have open political debates, meaning they lifted their foot off the gas when it comes to censorship of non-criminal content. And that has caused a very big ruckus all around the world because a lot of foreign leaders are angry that people can now have open public discussions that are not controlled by some kind of authoritarian system. Now, you could argue part of that was because of personal views. Elon Musk is a very big advocate for freedom of speech. That was one of the big reasons he said he wanted to do this. Notably, he's very big on the First Amendment, and he's very big on the Second Amendment. Zuckerberg has, you know, it's interesting with him. He has given statements before publicly about his belief in freedom of speech. Actually, he has done this. Although he talks more about like freedom of expression, right? He has given public statements on this. And what happened post-election, or even towards, not even post-election, even leading up to the 2024 elections, is Mark Zuckerberg came out and said that Facebook would not be doing the kind of campaign that it did in 2020, when he was giving a lot of money to voting organizations, and he was accused of, you know, they called it the Zuck bucks. He was accused of unfairly distributing that money so that it would support Democrats more than Republicans. And many people accused him of having interfered with the election results back in 2020. Now, he could still face criminal charges for that, potentially. There could still be investigations into that, potentially. because some people have suggested that crimes may have been violated in that because the effect of it was partisan, not nonpartisan. And that could violate several laws. The other big thing that happened was that Facebook implemented a lot of these fact checkers. It started working with third-party fact-checking organizations, different news agencies, which are the mainstream media, and even government agencies, which were enforcing different fact-checking operations and even censorship operations. When they had different campaigns coming out, leaking information, you had whistleblowers stepping forward. There were the Twitter files, there were the YouTube files, there were people coming out and blowing the whistle on Facebook. And it was revealed that there were government agencies working with these platforms and recommending or flagging content which the platforms were then censoring. They had lists of users who were deemed to be spreaders of disinformation. We now know that a lot of what was framed as disinformation turned out to not be fake. It turned out to be true. And a lot of the content and narratives that were framed as being true turned out to be false. And that raises some real problems when business interest ties in with it, because you have news agencies involved with it. A lot of the big corporate media were part of that. A lot of third-party organizations and different NGOs and even foreign governments were part of that. And the people who were victimized by that, whether it be individual content creators, independent media, or just online influencers, all those people could sue. They could sue many people who were involved with that, and they might do it. Now, Zuckerberg came out publicly and he gave public statements, and he essentially said, not his exact words, but he essentially said that Facebook did not do that because they wanted to. Facebook did that because of government pressure. And so it does seem that he's tried wiping his hands of that, saying, we did not want to do this. We did it because we were pressured. And I believe he has a strong case in making that point, because if you remember what happened, post-2016, the 2016 elections, and everybody was saying Russia, 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 Russia disinformation, Russia collusion with Trump, which was fake, by the way. It turned out that was a big lie. But they were saying that. Then they started calling in, having congressional hearings, and they were calling in Mark Zuckerberg to go and testify before Congress. And they were calling in the heads of different big tech companies to testify before Congress. And you had members of Congress grilling these individuals, saying, how is it that you allow Russian disinformation on your platforms? Russian disinformation rigged our elections. This was 2016 and the narratives, right? I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm saying this is what they said, and it turned out it was fake. But they were grilling these people, saying, why do you not have better content moderation? Why do you allow this type of content on your platforms? They were talking about removing some of the legal protections of these big tech companies. They were talking about regulating these companies, and they made it clear that if these companies did not play ball politically with a massive censorship program, that they could be fined, shut down, investigated, and face all kinds of repercussions. And so what happened? Many of those platforms began kicking off users. You saw YouTubers just disappearing left and right, kicked off the platform, banned, shadow banned, the alt-right, the big narratives with this, the dishonest, rumor spreaders and conspiracy theorists. They labeled people, they kicked them off, they disappeared them. YouTube did that. Google did it, where you started seeing all the big corporate media started getting preferential treatment with search results. Facebook did it, where you saw different Facebook groups, which used to be a big part of the platform. Any kind of conservative group, a lot of them were kicked off the platform. You saw that on Reddit, where you had pages like the Donald, for example, which was a support page for Donald Trump supporters. They got kicked off the platform, massively censored. They ended up creating their own website. And Twitter did the same thing, where you had a lot of conservatives getting shadow banned, demoted, and essentially you saw independent voices no longer able to make a living, no longer able to get access to ad networks, and they got strangled by this massive corporate government system. And what's happened since then? A lot of those organizations have pushed back. Many of those individuals managed to survive by creating independent platforms. And you saw the rise of new platforms, like, for example, Rumble and so on. And then, of course, with Elon Musk buying Twitter, making it X, that was a big shift with this. And where it stands now is that a lot of people who believe that they were victims of that, they are talking about suing these companies. And what is happening now with Donald Trump coming into office? Trump himself is saying he will investigate what he calls the censorship cartel. The cartel being these different organizations that have colluded with each other in a conspiracy to eliminate these different independent voices and to suppress certain political narratives. And you have government agencies involved with this, you have big businesses involved with this, you have foreign countries involved with this, ad networks involved with this, search engines involved with this, the whole 9 yards. He's saying that not only could all of them be opened up for lawsuits, but you could even see criminal charges related to antitrust violations because they colluded with each other in order to do this. And so when it comes to Mark Zuckerberg, again, it's not clear whether this is about cutting costs or avoiding some legal troubles or trying to say, we did not want to do this, we were forced to do it. And that was partly the case. Without a doubt, he was pressured by government. It's not clear how much he was on board with that. But it could be this case, right? It could be any of these. I don't know what his thinking is. But without a doubt, I do think you're going to see a lot of lawsuits very soon against these different companies. Let's see here. Science Chick, 72, you're saying, Greenland hasn't had this much attention since the Vikings landed. I think you might be right. It's actually interesting. I was looking at the economy of Greenland because I was like, well, what do they actually do? I was under the impression that one of Greenland's big industries was server farms, right? So for internet servers, it turns out it's not. I thought it was. Their economy is like fishing. It's like fish. They don't really have much of an economy. In fact, they can't even fully fund their own government. Denmark covers about 50% of the cost of their government. They don't have a major economic sector. Their energy industry is just terrible. They had blackouts recently, for example. They get a lot of their energy from green energy, even though that they could have massive oil reserves and a lot of other stuff. They don't have much. Now, the country is about 50,000 people. It's not a lot of people. They're not independent. They are controlled by Denmark. And they're not prosperous. They are not a prosperous country. Not by any means. And so the idea of having a big business move there, of having an industry move there, and you have 50,000 people who can have a very good job suddenly, or many good jobs, this actually might be enough to incentivize some of these individuals to want to be part of the United States. And keep in mind, too, the United States has many territories that are not states. And they're relatively self-governed, and if anything, actually America doesn't really get anything from them other than maybe the ability to have military bases there and so on. Like, for example, Guam or Saipan. People forget Saipan's an American territory. Like what is the industry in Saipan, right? Not much. What about Puerto Rico, for example? Or different areas that are American territories that we forget we have. A lot of these areas get money from the U.S. government, get support from the U.S. government, and they don't really have to give much back. Greenland could be given an opportunity like that. And look, the reality is they're already under a similar situation with Denmark. And if they were just to trade Denmark with the United States, it would be just exponentially better for them, right? Now, I don't know what the level of support is in Greenland itself for this. Maybe people would not want this. Some of them want independence. The reality with independence, total independence, and this has been something they've been pushing for a very long time, is that they don't have the money for it. They don't have the industry for it. They don't have the business for it. And so they need to have their government at least 50% funded by Denmark still, right? Which is not a major economic power either. And so, Denmark does not want this to happen. That could change. We will see where it goes. But I think Trump actually is pretty serious about it, and we'll see which way it goes. Trump is also suggesting that he could put tariffs on Denmark if Denmark refuses to sell it, which could pressure Denmark into doing this, although a bit of strong-arming involved there. Ashley from California, you're saying, why is there such a push to get Greenland? But why is Greenland under Dutch control? Not Dutch, it's under the Danes. The Dutch would be in the Netherlands, of course, right? This goes back in history. From what I understand, Greenland, of course, was settled by it wasn't technically Vikings, it was just, seafaring people from Denmark, the Danes. They went, I believe, first to Iceland, from Iceland then to Greenland. And then from Greenland, actually, you did have a couple of them go to the United States. I actually have a collection of the Icelandic sagas that talk about this. And the original settlers in Greenland coming from Iceland, were criminal exiles. It was an individual accused of crimes, went there and had a very rough time trying to settle in Greenland. Not a lot of food, not a lot of industry, very harsh environment. The Danish settlers in Greenland did not really work with the native Inuit. The Inuit are still the major population. They're actually not Danish, but Inuit. And many of them ended up dying, the Danish. A lot of them ended up dying in the first winter. And so it was always a very rough place to settle. It was always a very difficult place for them to be. But it does. I don't know the entire history, but I do know that basically Iceland, being much easier to settle, easier to build industry there, big population, that was able to kind of move forward more. Greenland being a very rough environment, they couldn't really build up the economic sectors that they would need to really sustain themselves. And so from what I understand, they maintained themselves under Denmark because they're not really able to sustain themselves independently. They actually need the financial support for their government. Judy Akeem, you're saying, isn't this a bit overboard with Mexico too? Calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. You're saying, I get the Panama Canal, but Mexico, Canada, let Greenland vote, sure, but doesn't this look like expanding the empire? If a Russian president came in and started talking about taking Poland, yeah, and that actually is part of the criticism Trump is facing right now. It's like, wait a minute, why is America talking about conquering other countries suddenly? This actually used to be something that was bigger in the world. America did take Hawaii. I know my great-grandma, who was there when that happened, she was very, very unhappy about it because the memory she had in Hawaii as one of the natives was that basically the Americans came and basically just made them get jobs, and they didn't really need it. You could live off the land, and you didn't really need it, and so they weren't too happy about that. And for a lot of them, previously under Hawaiian law, at least under the old kings, every family would be given a plot of land on the beach and a plot of land in the mountains. And so the quality of life was pretty good for Hawaiians, although given that my grandma still lived in a grass hut, you know what I mean? Or my great-grandma, I'm sorry. And so, they weren't, you could argue life improved in some regards, but did not in others, right? The Philippines almost became a U.S. state The Philippines were an American colony for a long time. They ended up voting against statehood and became independent. But the Philippines could have become an American state. They could have been the 51st state of the United States. And, you know, America has actually maintained a lot of colonies. I mentioned Puerto Rico, I mentioned Saipan, I mentioned Guam, you know, that have not achieved statehood but are still under the U.S. And so this is not like historically that unusual. It's just not been politically acceptable for the last 100+ years for countries to do this. Now, what Trump is talking about doing is not conquering by force. What he's talking about is technically conquering by business. And you could argue as well that the American purchase of Alaska from Russia is similar to that. Maybe one of the greatest deals in world history, aside from maybe the purchase, or maybe even on the same level, the purchase of Manhattan from the natives, although they bought it from the wrong Indian tribe. You know what I mean? One of the greatest deals in history, the purchase of Alaska. It could be that America makes some kind of deal with Canada, maybe makes some kind of deal with Greenland, or some kind of deal to get back the Panama Canal, that could just involve a financial element to it. And Trump talking about using tariffs to do that could achieve that. Now, they're talking about statehood. It could become a territory. It's not clear, folks. Now, again, Trump is facing some criticism for this because it looks like he's conquering other countries, right? And again, that has not been politically acceptable for a very long time. And so, again, have your own opinion on it, but he is kind of talking about conquering other countries right now using business. Let's see, TZ Burton, you're saying California has a lot of water, but stupid environmental laws. That is true. California keeps saying that it has droughts. You know, when I was a kid, and you know, I'm from San Diego originally. When I was a kid, I remember I don't know if they had these across the whole country. It was just a California thing. But they had commercials all the time on TV about how California had a drought, and we had to reduce our water use, and they didn't want you to water your lawn. And in some parts of California, if you don't water your lawn, it's like arid, desert-looking stuff. It just doesn't look good at all. When I was a kid, they recommended that you get gallon milk jugs and fill them with water and close them and put them in the bathtub to create, you know, space so that you use less water to fill a bathtub if you take a bath. Like, you know, I grew up hearing all that. And so I was actually surprised to learn about why California has a water shortage. And one of the big reasons is the river where California gets a lot of its water from apparently has some kind of trout that they want to protect environmentally. And so they don't let California pull from that water source as much as they should. And they just dump the water directly into the ocean. And so all that fresh water that we should be using to like live on, they're just dumping it into the ocean. And some people have questioned whether that's the right thing to do environmentally if an environmental policy is creating the water shortage. And some people have also suggested that California could adopt what Israel does. I found this very interesting, actually, just talking to people. Israel gets a lot of its fresh water from desalinization plants. It's desalinated seawater. They have plants that process seawater, and they remove the salt. And so they turn seawater into drinking water. And you know, for Israel, that makes a lot of sense because you're talking about a desert region that would not really have a good water supply, or not a decent one at least, without that. And if California really does, maybe they just really want to protect those trout, or maybe it's salmon, I can't remember if it's trout or salmon. They just want to protect those trout so bad that they will never let us touch that water. Well, maybe you should build desalination plants. And then you could have enough water for the whole state and you don't have to worry about it as much. There are a lot of proposals with this that are not really being accepted. And so it's kind of a self-inflicted wound in some regards that they deal with this problem. Let's see. TZ Burton, you're saying, when you move to Texas, leave your voting habits in California. Yeah, a lot of people feel that way. Let's see. Kenneth Harris, you're saying, I think Trump is trolling how messed up Canada is. The Danish handling of Greenland and D.C. is in Washington, D.C., and keeping old world powers out of Americas to include the Panama Canal. How could you allow the CCP to have any part of the Panama Canal? You know, I thought Trump was trolling Canada at first, too. This is what I think is going to happen, because I've been thinking about this a lot. This is what I think is going to happen. Trump is threatening 35% tariffs on Canada, right? Or maybe 25%, unless they secure their border. Canada is going to be forced to make stronger border policies. Now, they seem like they want to do that. Canada, when Trump threatened that, and you had Justin Trudeau go to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump, it came to the forefront that Canada, they said that they could not survive as a country if they faced those types of tariffs. Trump is talking about using tariffs to essentially eliminate income tax in the United States. He wants to have little to no taxes for most Americans. And then it brought more attention to the broader problems we have to trade with Canada, that we trade at a $100 billion deficit with Canada. And people talk about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement with Canada and Mexico and the United States, and how ripped off we were in that deal. I personally know people who lost their businesses because the jobs went to Canada. And so, for Americans, this is a big problem. The low education, blue-collar jobs where you can get an apprenticeship, very well-paying jobs, electrician, carpenter, and I'm not insulting these. I personally did an apprenticeship for carpentry. My dad works as a carpenter. I think it's a great industry. But those jobs have been taken by illegal immigrants. Low-income jobs, restaurants, that kind of stuff, a lot of it taken by illegal immigrants. Middle-income jobs, if you want to start a business in a trade, if you want to work in a factory, a lot of those were actually, a lot of them went to China, but a lot of it was taken by NAFTA. A lot of the jobs went to Mexico, and a lot of it went to Canada. And a lot of it went to China, right? And so we don't have the middle-income jobs. We don't have the automotive industry in Detroit. We don't even have that. And then you get to the high-income jobs, like the high-tech jobs. And then you have the H-1B issue where it's being taken by people doing lotteries, and they're giving it to people willing to work less using H-1Bs. And so for Americans, it's like, well, where do I work? Where do I get a decent job? I can't do the blue collar. I can't do the white collar. I can't do the manufacturing because you offshored all of it. What am I going to do with my life? And so for a lot of people, I'm not saying it's absolute by any means, right? But for a lot of people, this is how they feel. And when they look and see that we're losing $100 billion a year to the country that we gave our jobs to, they're saying, well, why are we doing this? Now, the issue Canada is going to have is they become dependent on this. American business going to Canada through NAFTA and then later on through Trump's renegotiated trade program, which really didn't fix many things, actually. And if actually, in some regards, we lose more money to Canada than we did under NAFTA under the renegotiated plan Trump made with them, right? Although you can blame COVID or whatever if on that as well. And same thing with Mexico. A lot of the imports we have from Canada, it's lumber, it's energy, for example, it's gas. If we renew domestic manufacturing of that, we don't need Canada. If we move manufacturing, jobs, and big business back to America, and we just get rid of that agreement we have with them, it will not impact quality of life in America one drop, but it will massively impact the quality of life in Canada. And if Canada even just loses the trade deficit, it will be detrimental to them. And so the quality of life in Canada is already hard enough, a lot of that being caused by limited housing, mass migration programs, and also just a lot of places are not easy to live there. A lot of people want to live in the big cities, and that's about it. It's very delicate. And if Trump, on top of that, renews domestic oil production, that's a huge part of their economy gone. If he renegotiates trade deals, if he puts tariffs on them, Canada as a country financially will be in a very difficult state. And it is possible in that very difficult state that they may actually agree to become part of the U.S. And I don't know if Trump's being serious with this when he talks about putting that offer on the table, but he could use this as a real issue to negotiate with them, because what he's doing in Canada is he is forcing them to look at the problem and look at their future and say, we're going to lose a lot. He sparked an actual debate with them politically, a debate that is so powerful that Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, stepped down from office and now announced he's going to. Like that is how powerful that debate is. Now, when it comes to Mexico, it's the same thing. A lot of Mexican exports, a lot of it's illegal stuff, right? They get a lot of remittances from illegal immigrants. A lot of the cash flowing in the economy is drugs and human trafficking. But a lot of the legitimate business is automotive. And Trump's talking about bringing that back to America, right? The Mexican economy is about to be just decimated on some of this, right? And so, he's not offering them any kind of, silver platter by any means. He's not saying, hey, how'd you like to become the 51st state to them? But you could see some real problems there as well. And so, if you read about the art of the deal and how Trump does business, my research on Trump and his business mentality is this. He will put pressure on you. He'll hit you in a pressure point, and he will make you feel that pain, right? He'll hurt you. He'll dig into that pressure point, and then he'll let off, right? And then he'll say, here's your offer. You want it, right? This is your offer. If you do not accept the offer, the pain comes again, right? I don't want to make any bad jokes on this, but that's kind of what he does, right? And that's how he does his deals. And so I think by making kind of an extreme offer, hey, you guys can't even sustain yourselves economically. You can't live without us subsidizing you. You can't survive without the deals we've given you that are harmful to us. We're going to take all of that away. Here is your offer. Do you want it? And whether that is going to be the final offer or not, he is sparking a debate. He's making them just furiously look at the possible desolation of their economy, and making them face a very, very difficult prospect of what it could mean for their quality of life. Honestly, I kind of feel bad for them almost, because this would really hurt Canada, actually. But the other side of it is Trump is saying, well, America first, make America great again, domestic manufacturing, tariffs to support this, and no taxes, little to no taxes. That's what I want. And if your country cannot survive without ripping us off, then maybe you need to rethink how you do things. That's the American mentality with this. And so I think that's kind of what he's doing right now. I don't know how serious he is about the statehood thing, but this is what I think he's doing right now. Anyways, folks, we'll see what he does with this. Trump is talking about expansionism and American imperialism. I think he's using this as a business strategy, is what he's really doing. And even with Greenland, America, this is the other prospect for Greenland. If America can build an economic sector in Greenland, Greenland would not need to have 50% of its government funded by Denmark. Greenland would have enough money to fund its own government, and Greenland could become independent, the thing they've wanted for a long time. It doesn't have to be statehood. It doesn't have to be to become, part of the United States, like as a territory. It could be they become independent. But what Trump is doing is putting pressure not so much on Greenland, but instead Denmark, because Denmark is what runs Greenland right now. And so Trump actually may not want to absorb them. He may just want to have businesses there and probably a massive military base, because what I think he really wants is, well, oil, possibly rare earth minerals, but especially a very strong Arctic military presence to push back against China, and also have a relay point to Europe so that we would not have to, staging our military, we would not have to go all the way from the east coast of the United States. This would expand U.S. military reach, similar to the way we use Hawaii, right? Hawaii is a massively important military asset, and Greenland would be on par with the military importance of Hawaii, something that works as a satellite extension of U.S. military power. And personally, I think that's what he wants. We'll see what he does with it. Vicky, you're saying Trump, President of America and King of Trolls. He kind of is. Yeah. Which I think a lot of his supporters like him because of that. I know some people are like, gee, I wish he was a little more presidential, right? I wish he'd keep his mouth shut. A lot of his supporters think it's hilarious. So there's different views on how he does this kind of stuff. But it's also how he does business. It's also how he does his business deals. All right, folks, that said, again, this is just my analysis, right, on these different things. Join me tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Always a pleasure talking with you all. Please like this video. Please share this video. Help us get the word out, folks. And that said, thank you so much for being here. I will see you tomorrow. And as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.